welcome. Thank you all. Hello. Thank you all so much for being here. We are so excited to have you to have this conversation. We're just going to give it about 1 minute while we have some folks join us on Zoom. And for our friends and folks watching through HowlRound, hello. We'll begin in 1 minute. But we're so excited to have you. Meanwhile, for the folks who are with us today on Zoom, my incredible colleague Danielle King will be here for technical difficulties. So, any questions, please chat her in our chat. If you would like access to captions for today and you're in the Zoom room, Danielle is going to share a link so that you can access those captions. And if you are live streaming with us on HowlRound, the captions will be available for you as well on there. Hello, hello, hello. Well, while we get some more people in here, we'll begin just because I know we only have a short amount of time with Megan. But hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Maggio. I also go by N. I am the programs manager here at Art New York. My pronouns are they, them. And the visual description of myself is I am a white trans person. I'm wearing a black felt dress. I have black hair tied up in a bun. I have clean shaven today, and behind me are some white walls and my husband's plants, which are beautiful and watered, and I don't touch them for a good reason. I'm so excited to be here with Megan. And before I pass it over to introduce Megan and let her introduce herself, I would first love to share a land acknowledgement. So here we go. We would like to take this time to acknowledge that wherever we're currently located on Turtle Island, otherwise known as North America, we are on occupied territory. Art New York's membership in the 5 boroughs of New York City operates on the unceded ancestral land of the Lenape, Wappinger, Canarsie, Rockaway, and Matinecock communities. We want to honor and celebrate all of these Indigenous communities, their elders past and present, as well as for future generations. We also want to take this time to acknowledge that after there was stolen land, there were stolen people. We want to honor the generations of displaced and enslaved people that build and continue to build the country we occupy today. Since we're gathered today in virtual space, let's also take a moment to consider the legacies of colonizations embedded within technology structures and ways of thinking we use every day. We're using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many Indigenous communities. Even the technologies that are central to much of the art we make leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect Indigenous peoples worldwide. We invite you to join us in acknowledging all of this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good of this time and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, anti-racism, and allyship. Thank you. The virtual part of that land acknowledgement was written by Adrian Wong of Spiderweb Show in Ontario, Canada. And to learn more about whose land you are occupying, please visit native-land.ca. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Welcome to our chat today of Revenue NYC. I'm so blessed and graced and so much love to be joining this Monday, the day before my birthday, to be in conversation with Megan Finn. And before I pass it over to her, I would love to share a gorgeous biography of Megan. So Megan Finn is a director of theater and film. As the artistic director of The Tank, which is a New York City-based nonprofit theater, she supports the work of over 3,000 performing artists annually. And in 2020, she accepted the Obie Award for the Tank's excellence in service to artists. As an artist herself, Megan's focus is in contemporary playwriting and a hybrid collaboration with visual artists and experimental writers. She's directed over 50 fully staged theatrical productions since 2003. Megan's also a change maker. As a change maker, Megan is a member of Immigrant Families Together and co-founded Each Step Home, an organization that assists refugee children who have been separated at the US borders, reuniting them with their families. Together, the organization has helped reunite over 1,000 children since 2018, and her work was featured in the Netflix documentary Split at the Root. And today we are talking about how Meghan in 2024 founded Revenue NYC, a project inspired by the Tank's legacy of making space for artists. Revenue NYC works alongside the Tank to help theaters bounce back after the pandemic while serving more artists and building new audiences for culture throughout New York City. And therefore, Meghan is a 2024 recipient of the David Prize for Extraordinary New Yorkers. Thank you so much for being here, Meghan. Hello.
Hello, my name is Megan Finn. I use she, her pronouns. I have medium length blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm wearing a black t shirt.
Woo! We've gone back now 3 years. We've known each other, and probably before that, we've been in circles.
Yeah,
So I'm so happy to have you here and talk about Revenue NYC. And for folks who don't really know or have not heard what's happening in the last year, I would love to begin with you sharing with us a vision, the mission, the spirit and the heart of your organization.
absolutely. So I'll say that Revenue NYC has started as a project, which is based on the Tanks model. What we do is kind of pop up in spaces around the city and flood the space with artists and their work, and then operate on a revenue share with the space and the artists to try to bring new audiences in and give more free space to artists in the performing arts. So we've launched in September of 2024. So far, we've done 5 pop-ups,
Wow.
featured the work of over 200 artists, and it's been really exciting so far.
Congratulations. And I'm hearing from the chat that your volume's a little bit low, so you might have to come a little bit closer to your
Oh, let me see
microphone.
if I can bring up my gain. Is that helping?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And if not, Danielle will tell us.
Okay. Yeah, just let us know. I'm
Just
like,
let us know, Danielle. Oh, and Risa also said yes. So that's
okay,
great.
great. Awesome.
Um, so, having now been putting this in practice for a year, what surprises have you been finding? What are some aha moments in the past year of actualizing Revenue NYC?
Well, I did have all the confidence in the world that it would work because we've been doing it at the Tank for 22 years. And I think that it was just a matter of finding partners who wanted to kind of go on this experiment with us and
Mm.
pilot it. But I really have been blown away by with the small kind of ragtag way that we've been working so far, by kind of staffing up per project. It's really been wonderful to see audiences come out, people coming to venues that maybe they didn't know. I mean, that's been the thing. The aha moment is how many times I've been at one of these events and had a person walk in the door and say, I did not know this place was here. So I think that uh, that's very anecdotal, but over and over and over again, we've seen that, and that's really exciting. So yeah.
That's beautiful. And I attended the past one, a couple of showings in April at the Art New York venue, Revenue NYC that we did, and I was blown away by how many people showed up. And I attend a lot of readings myself. Readings, as many artists know, are hard to fill, and I went to 2 readings, and it was so impressive how many people showed up. So that was beautiful. That was an aha moment as an audience member for me. um,
Absolutely.
I would love to hear if there were any assumptions going into it that didn't hold up in the practice, the opposite of an aha moment.
I was kind of wary of, just to be perfectly honest, wary of trying this in different size spaces because,
Mm,
I'm used to the Tank. Uh the Tank has grown quite a bit since I started there. But we are still very nimble. We have a relatively small, we're full-time staff of 6 people. And so, entering into other spaces where maybe there's a lot more infrastructure, a lot more staff, I was a little wary of, okay, well, what are the guidelines and things that are going to be stuff that we come up against, in trying to make the model fit? But I was pleasantly surprised, I would say. I think that there is it's interesting. I think that you may have been working at a venue that is a little more established, has a little bit more infrastructure, but you still have that excitement that comes
Mm,
with having a lot of artists come through, and that energy. It can be exciting for people that are
mm,
working in and kind of in a different model right now, maybe a rental model, to have this kind of pop up. It just creates it's rejuvenating for some people, I would say.
mm. That's
So
gorgeous.
that was this assumption that I was kind of overturned by the process.
And if you could go back to, June of 2024, what is one note you would tell yourself from the beginning?
Um, get ready because people want to do this. Like I thought maybe I'd be pulling teeth, but it hasn't felt that way at all. I feel like there's a lot of momentum, and it's just making me think about how we're preparing for it, preparing
Mm,
for what the project could be when it's not just piloting, when it's something that is really well established.
that's gorgeous. So now let's talk about the impact of Revenue NYC on artists, audiences, and venue. So from your perspective, what do you think artists gain beyond just space? What does real support and what did real support look like in this past year?
Well, I think um I think that it's not just about necessarily space itself.
Mm,
It's about opening up their work to other venues. Like when they have the experience of performing in a different venue, say a larger venue, a venue with more things to offer them,
mm,
there's the opportunity to show their audience. It demonstrates I mean, value is a complicated word, but I do think it gives people a feeling of pride when
mm,
they can have different audiences experience their work in a different venue that has, say, a lot more lighting instruments or a lot
mm,
more sound equipment than they are typically able to afford. And I think it just it was really nice to see artists who say, it's nice to have different venues on my resume besides the
yeah.
tank. you know, so my work has been seen elsewhere. Um, and also I think that there is just I've been excited by how many artists have wanted to participate.
Mm,
Or like we did a pop-up at Mark Morris, and it was so gratifying for these choreographers who brought these pieces in and said, "Oh my gosh, this space is huge.
mm,
I can like finally have the space to fully see this dance piece because it's
mm.
enough room for it." And that was really exciting.
And what I'm hearing also is like they're getting connections, right? Like
Mm.
those dancers, those choreographers, those artists who haven't been connected to Mark Morris, now they're in their actual space, they're in those walls, and then they have the community that who know Mark Morris to come and see their work and be introduced to that. So I would love to hear a little bit more about connection and community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to be continuing a relationship with Mark Morris Dance Center as we continue the project because they were so excited. We had 19 different projects in the end, that from like a huge marching band to a solo piece. I mean, there were such a variety of pieces. And I think in that case, that particular pop-up was really exciting for the artistic staff there. They were so excited to see all these artists that some of them were taught in their
Mm.
like program, but they've never seen their work. And it was really moving, honestly, to have just this opportunity to see all these different artists that they hadn't gotten to see before working in their space. And for me, it's always, well, you know what? I'm gonna save this for later because I read the questions that Reese is gonna ask me, and I just thought, well, maybe I'll let me save this. I'll save it for later. I'll say it later.
When Risa Shoup joins us. Um, no, but I love that like full circle thing. It's like if they took a class and then now they're presenting their work there, right? And that it's like dismantling the hierarchical structures as well of like what
Yeah,
that can be.
I also have found in the preliminary conversations with venues, and I know there's a lot of venues listening in, and I understand that there are I also run a venue. So I come at these conversations like, I get it. You're like, we can't do that. There's no way we can do that. Okay, I get it. Let's like brainstorm around it and figure out what it might look like in this different way. I totally understand that there are limitations. But I do feel like, I have come into these conversations and there's so much, there is a desire to create opportunities where more artists can use these spaces. It's
Mm,
just that there isn't kind of the means to do that. And so the question then becomes like, how could you possibly do it's too much work. It's like too, and in a sense it is like if it's done in the way that they usually do things, it might be too much work. But if we
mm,
can pop up and use this as essentially slot in like a where a rental would be normally, but we slot in and do it this different way, it's quite possible. So it kind of takes a lot of the project holds a different amount of that kind of responsibility depending on what the limitations of the venue structure is.
mm, mm. Um, did any artists shift their own understanding of producing and collaboration through your venue?
Did any artists shift their understanding of producing and collaboration
Any
through?
stories of artists you know who have participated in this year and were like, oh, wow, this is a new way of collaborating. This is a new way of producing that I'm learning.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a specific example. Um, I think that I think that by and large, like, people have, and of course, it's not like you have 200 different artists. It's not like every artist is like, this is the best thing, but so many, not every, there's always going to be people that are like, I don't want to do this ever again. You're like, that's fine. Because it's also not, does not need to be for every piece and every artist. But by and large, like the vast majority of artists, I think they were just really excited about the possibilities of
Mm,
working in new spaces, and they kind of need a way to like I think the project is a little bit of a connector
mm,
between the spaces that really need a way to get more artists in and different audiences in, and the artists that really do need the space and need to have like a feeling that they're like moving, you know, that there's some move upward trajectory and like a whatever in the ecosystem, that
mm,
they're like, I can have a bigger house, I can have a bigger space to all this art I've got going on. So did it change their idea of producing? I mean, I think for a lot of artists it just shows them that it's possible that
mm.
that their work can be, that it's possible for them to get their work seen in different places. It's a way for them to do that. But also, no, you know what I will say? We did a pop-up at Bechtel Project in Greenpoint. And for them, it really was a proof of concept. They
Wow.
do residencies, they do specific, very bespoke, like specific residencies, which are really invaluable for the people that have gotten them. But they were like, how could we do something like this? Could we have programming like it's a live work space, like they live in part of it, and then it's like the other half is this performance, really rehearsal space. They're like, how can we make it into a performance venue, and what would you need to do that, and how would it work? And so for them it was really a proof of concept of like, this is how it could work in your space. And that was great, because that's going to pay dividends no matter, because it's a new, they can think of it like a true venue.
And they're excited to continue, or like what was the like post of that?
They were like, let's do it again. Like, okay. I'm like, I gotta do it like 4 other places and I'll be back.
You're like, I'll be
But
back
yeah,
soon. Wait,
yeah,
that's huge to like, because some,
yeah.
as you say, like this model, this way of working might not be for everyone or serve for every project. And like
Or every
that,
space,
or
and
every
that's fine
space.
too. Yeah, yeah,
And that is should not be looked at as like a failure. Like, right? Like experiments are trials, and
yeah. Yes.
sometimes it will work and it'll open more doors and open possibilities, and then finding out that maybe this isn't really working for this venue or for this artist or for this piece, that's a success too, to find out, well, that model's not working, let's figure out what other models or new models that we can brainstorm that could work.
Absolutely. And it's also like, how do we tweak this model? Like if this
Mm,
isn't like if this doesn't feel great, like, okay, well, what would? Oh, we did too many shows. Let's do it over a shorter period of time. Or that's,
mm.
we didn't do enough shows, which is not usually the case.
I was gonna say, it's like
That's
not enough show.
but no, but maybe it's not. Like maybe
Yeah,
to make the model work, to make it more financially, like math out, we have to change things, adjust
yeah.
things. Yeah.
Find that flexibility,
Yeah.
that flow. I would love to hear a little bit about now having done it at, you said 5 different venues. Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Yep.
Um, we talked a lot about artists. We're going to talk about venues in a minute, but I'd love to talk about audiences. So, how are audiences responding to Revenue NYC's programming, the format and the work, but just being introduced to this new way of coming to see work in New York City?
So this is a little bit of a, I don't know how much this is something people want to hear about, but let me just say it anyway.
Do it.
We've done a little bit of papering just for because not like necessarily across the board, but sometimes you know, the whole way that this works is, and I haven't really talked about that at all, but we basically maximize the use of the space, right? So we're doing multiple shows, and in a single day to try to spread out the risk. So if I have the venue for a day, I'm going to do 2 to 3 shows that day, quick texts. This is like we find out how much time we have in the space and we kind of divide it all equally amongst the artists. And then we're marketing, the thing as a whole, but audiences follow the artists, right? So it's going to be a lot. By and large, the artist is bringing a new audience to a space that they've never been to. And so for some artists, plus or minus, they're learning. I mean, that's the other thing about this is like when you stack shows, you don't rely on one box office per night.
Mhm.
You're kind of spreading the risk across. And if you're doing them day by day after day, if we do it like 2 weeks at Art New York, I think we did 23 shows.
Yeah.
So you're spreading out the risk, right? And each of these shows, when you operate on the ticket split, are going to give you a little chunk of money, right? And some artists are still learning how to market their work, and they might not have a lot of people come come out for their show. So we've had we've done a little papering kind of throughout the whole thing. We have this like I feel like we have this, which I think says something. Again, I'll try to keep this brief because I don't know if anybody cares about this, but
I care.
I see the same people who have the opportunity to like sign up for tickets. They're at everyone. This isn't like a tank thing where it's like, oh, the usual suspects. It's gotten kind of a reputation where people are like, ooh, revenue. Ooh, I want to see what they've got cooking. I've saw something really cool. We were doing it the Mark Morris thing, and I had people show up with, of course, it was complimentary tickets, but to watch like 6 hours of dance, like a little crew of cool like theater ladies coming to see 6 hours of dance. And I was like, hey, I saw you at the last 2. And they're like, yeah, Revenue is cool. Like every time we see it, we're like, oh, let's check this out. This is something new. We're going to see something we've never seen. So that is a very, very specific anecdote that doesn't give us a lot of money, but like it was something that made me like, oh, wow, these people are really getting excited about this project and like following. And I think that's what, when I talk about like the future needs of the project and marketing, it's really about people starting to understand that whenever you come out to see a Revenue show and buy a ticket, you're going to see something really interesting, and you're going to see it in a venue that maybe you didn't know about.
And that's like investing in your audience, right? Because you're like investing in those folks to come and continue a relationship with you, investing in that relationship as you grow.
Absolutely. And I think we're really looking for, I think on the artist side, we're also looking for people that are excited about the challenge of the new space and doing a new show. And so it's been, vibes are good. I would say vibes are good. And I also love to be able, when we leave a venue and we've had 2 weeks of shows, I say, hey, venue, here's this marketing data. Here are the people that
Mhm.
came. Now you can start. They had a great time at your venue. They know where the bathroom is. They know how to get there. And now you can invite them to your next show, And I think so as an audience development, tool, I think it can feed itself and play it forward as a project to other venues, but it can also be something that the venues use to market their work too.
And we at Art New York believe in data so much. It is everything. It is a gift for venues. So that is beautiful that you offer that. Because we were talking about papering an audience and ticketing, we had a question in the chat that came up that I would love to hear the price ranges of tickets. For example, in the last couple of Revenue
Yeah.
NYC events you've
So we
had.
typically do tiered ticketing, no difference between the tickets. I kind of work with the venue to talk about like how does this feel? Usually they start at 20. Um, and I think we've usually been doing something like 20, 35, 50. Literally no difference between the tickets. Just give the audience the opportunity to pay more if they want to. And then that goes into the split with the artists and the venue.
Beautiful. And before we invite Risa Shoup on here, and we're going to talk about the venue part of it, I would like to take a step back a little bit, which is something I should have probably led with in the beginning. But I would love to hear an example for folks who are either streaming on HowlRound and have not been to a Revenue event in New York City, or have not do not live in the city. Like an example of the partnership of the venue and Revenue NYC, and what a typical couple days look like during this kind of producing event.
Sure. So Revenue kind of brings like a core little team in, usually one or two producers and depending on the depending on what the venue has to offer, potentially a technical person and some amount of front of house staff depending on again what's available in the venue. Then we're working with the venue and finding out like when's the hard out, which is like which we got a little dicey with at Art New York. But then we're like kind of working backwards and saying, okay, what are the ideal show times? This is also something we're learning. Are people going to come out, to Brooklyn? It's a lot easier to try to do like two shows, one that starts at 7 and one that starts at 8:30, which is a tight turnaround. It makes for a really fringe style turnaround, but it means that like we can accommodate artists, our audiences, that they're going to actually show up, right? As opposed to 9:30 might be like not doing it. And then so we set a schedule with them. The artists, we put out a call for artists that can look different depending on the venue. Some of our partner venues are, I noticed Mabu Mines is on is on the call, and we're going to be working with them coming up next month, has like an artist roster of people that they want to offer to first. Same with Mark Morris. With Mark Morris, what we ended up doing was offering it to Mark Morris community renters that have rented their space and then opening it up to the broader community. So we ended up with a nice mix of artists and then worked with them to kind of curate the roster. And then there's spaces that are like, okay, Revenue, you do it. Where we do all the, like when we did it at Paradise Factory, we did all the curation out of submissions. We do an open call, we get a bunch of submissions, and then we curate from there. So that looks different depending on the venue, and we're open to talking about what that looks like.
Mm.
And then we do onboarding with them, which is very similar to the tank. We do site visits with them, also very similar to the tank. We kind of use the systems that we've been using at the tanks for 22 years to work with a high volume of artists, get them all set up so that they can do shows in kind of a quick turnaround. And then their Habitek time that's predetermined depending on the availability. That's been anything from 4 hours to 30 minutes, depending on what the availability is of space. And then they're loading in their stuff. We're talking about like how much stuff can they have in this space? Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's you need to bring it the night of and then you need to take it with you. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, you can store things for the week here in this part of the venue. So it really runs the gamut. And then they're loading in. We're selling tickets online, and then we're selling them in at the box office, and we're doing the show. That's it. That's how it works. Yeah.
And what I'm hearing, and tell me if this is true, is that what's beautiful about a programming model, a producing model like Revenue NYC, is that it can get specific and nuance based on the venue you're collaborating with. Like how you do this producing model at the Art New York spaces will be different than how you do it at Mark Morris. And there's a beauty in being able to be nimble. Is that true? And your
Absolutely.
answer?
And I think like I try to also build, the split is also is very transparent and presented to the artist from the beginning, but it's also dependent on the venue, because a lot of times I'm like, why don't you send me your rental contract?
Mm.
We'll go through it together, or on our own rather. We'll go through it. um, and then come back together and say, okay, well, so this is what you're trying to earn in a week. So this is what we're going to base the split on. The number
Mm.
of shows, the way that we're splitting. If we do a ticket hold to the venue / re-venue first. So that could be anywhere from 5 to 20 tickets that at the lowest tier of ticket price that are held to the venue before the split with the artist. So that is how we adjust to try to hit that rental goal, which we may
Gotcha.
not get to. We say very transparently, we might not hit that rental goal. But right now, before you let revenue in, you were at 0 for the week. And so we're going to try to get you, that's our goal. And then that's how we're adjusting it. So I think when you say it's venue dependent, how we're from the whole way we're trying to do the project is dependent on how things are typically done, and then seeing how we can adjust those to when they can be mutually beneficial for artists, revenue, and them.
Beautiful. Thank you. And this is like a perfect segue because we're going to now talk about the bigger picture and the broader picture in relationships with venue. And so I'm going to invite our incredible Risa Shoup, the co-executive director of Art New York, to the stage, to the Zoom stage. Come on down, Risa.
I wish I could play you in, Risa, but I really can't.
I really would love that. If I ever get the opportunity to be played in anywhere, it must be Busta Rhymes' version of "Thank You." I'll say on that.
Thank you so much, Risa, for joining us. Oh, go ahead, Megan.
No, I was saying we love it. We love it.
I don't know what you.
Before I bring with questions, I would love to take a moment to introduce yourself, Risa, a visual description, and then we'll jump right in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nikki. Hi, folks. So happy to see such a large group of you here today. Thanks for spending the time with us. My name is Risa Shoup. I am indeed a co-executive director of Art New York. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I am a white person. I am wearing like translucent, round plastic, pinkish glasses. I have short dark hair, and I'm wearing a light blue button-down shirt. And in back of me, you can see like a white cabinet and a door frame, and a white wall and a framed picture.
Beautiful, thank you. So how I would like to structure this part of our conversation is I'm going to ask questions and with the hopes of engaging conversation between Risa, Megan, and myself. So anyone can answer, anyone can pass. That's kind of how we're going to do this. And we'll begin talking about what does a re-venue style model offer that our current producing ecosystems can't or won't. And I know we touched a little bit on this, Megan, but I'd love to hear a little bit more and if Risa has additional thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, so it creates a way to bring new artists into a space. Ideally, it's replacing rental revenue, which for whatever reason the venue is not getting. So far, typically that's either been a period of time in their year where they don't typically have programming, or a period of time in their year where they lost a renter and there's not enough time to replace that rental revenue. And the question was, what does it provide that can't
Our,
or won't
that our current
provided?
producing ecosystems are not doing.
So rather than that space, because life is life, and we have all been working at venues where we've lost a renter, and we understand that there are ramifications to that scaled can be disastrous. And in one of these cases, which I'll not say, but one of these pop-ups that we did came about because they lost a renter, and they were like, literally, we don't know what we're going to do. We don't know how we're going to pay our rent. And so the fact that we were able to pay a significant amount of their rent that month was the reason and what it's fulfilling. And then I think for the artist side, at the Tank, this isn't fair to say because there are these smaller spaces that kind of have popped up around the city, a lot of in Brooklyn, Queens, that people are gravitating towards, but it feels as if they come and they're just holding on, and then they kind of evaporate often. And this is something that we see and we all know has happened and is happening.
Yeah.
This is where I'm suppressing the celebration of Broadway's economic boom that was happening, which was great. It was a great Tony's. Not to say anything, but I was like, oh, but it's like down here, we're like, oh, but I will say that that at the Tank, I feel we all feel the impact of loss of space because we have more submissions than we've ever had. We can barely get through them. We have many more artists in need of space than we can address. So that is the thing that this helps to combat is a very aggressive word, but combat.
Yeah. And then I would just answer, specifically for Art New York, and I'll try to be succinct, but before we knew about Revenue, Art New York had been thinking about just sort of like who within our membership, within sort of the broader nonprofit and spirit theater community, wasn't using our theaters, right? Were they not using it because they wanted a different duration for their rental than we could provide our theaters? I know that many of you know this, but just quickly, like our theaters offer a fairly traditional off-Broadway model in which the more weeks you rent, the greater the subsidy that is available to you on the cost of the rental. So again, like, are people not using our theaters because they want to rent for a shorter duration than we're offering? Is it too expensive? Are they not ready to kind of like staff a venue like ours? What, genuinely curious, like, what is that reason, and who within our membership are not using them? And then the other thing we were learning was that, the majority of our membership, many of you, in fact, reflect companies with a budget of under $500,000, many with a budget under $250,000. And so what is it specifically that companies of that budget size are looking for? And what is it that sort of earlier career companies in that budget size are looking for? So again, like, we're just asking ourselves a lot of these questions about how can we better work in service within our theaters with certain populations of our membership. And then we learned about Revenue, and it felt like this tremendous opportunity to test something to fill a gap. And it has been so gratifying to do this pilot in our theaters, and I know that we hope to do more. And indeed, it has allowed us to work with individual artists, with independent creative producers who, for any number of reasons, and all of them valid, are not currently renting our theaters. It also allowed us to do something that's really exciting, which is to try a new model in the middle of the year. That is not easy. And I give, a lot of credit to the Revenue team. You've all had a great opportunity to sort of hear about how Meghan thinks about this and the other folks that she's with, and it's so intentional. But I also want to give credit to our staff who said, yeah, let's try this thing that we've never done before and learn from it. And that in and of itself is gratifying, but is, I think, another way that Art New York is able to show the community that you can make a change like that. You can try something new, which is also sort of at the heart of a lot of the work that you can see during Revenue.
I just want to uplift that you can try something new. You can make a change like that. That for me, I needed to hear that today. So thank you, Risa. I know we talked, Meghan, you mentioned that there's not enough space for the artists that are applying, right? So my question here is about scarcity mindset, excuse me. So what role do you think cultural institutions and venues should be playing right now in disrupting scarcity mindset for artists? How does this model challenge traditional hierarchies around access to space, visibility, and legitimacy?
This has also been something that from the get-go, I was curious about, because I really understand the a necessity to preserve a kind of aesthetic standard. When this is just very personal, but when I took over the Tank, I had co-produced a season of work with the Tank, and this was a long time ago. I was like, Hamilton's 10 years old. No. In 15, 16, I was at Three-Legged Dog, and we co-produced a season of work with the Tank. And it was very well reviewed. And I had kind of started off at Soho Rep, working at Soho Rep, and then was at 3LD, and we had this very exciting season. We did a lot of really cool pieces. And so when I took over the Tank, I was like, oh, basically wanting to focus on the core productions, the bigger shows, right? And the kind of presenting model that we did felt like, oh, this is just something we do. This is just some part of it. I'm really interested in doing these big shows. And listen, do I still do really cool big shows? Yes. Nikki has one right now. We just did Lobster. We've had a great season. We're still doing that work. But I've completely changed, because what I realize is when you open the doors and give artists the resources they need to do work, you very often get excellent work. And so I've really come full circle on this. And what I'm excited about Revenue NYC is that we can hold the aesthetic, we can hold that as like the entity we are, the aesthetic risk. We can hold that. And in another institution that has a certain level of standard, they can allow us in and allow the artists in. And what that does is changes the mindset of the artist and because as soon as they're allowed in, they no longer view that space as somewhere they're not welcome. And so when we think about a scarcity mindset, the assumption that I will never be welcome in this space because they only do this type of work. And this is something very clearly seen at Mark Morris Dance Center, where suddenly you have the artistic staff blown away by some of the work they're seeing that they never would in their own venue. They never would have had that opportunity. So I think that when I think about a scarcity mindset for artists, I think about the idea that like, that isn't for me. I'm never going to get in there. And then suddenly they have the opportunity to work in that very space. They can see themselves there. They are working there, and it changes that. So that's my answer.
Gorgeous. Risa, this question is something I'm pointing to you. What would you say to a venue leader who's on the fence about trying something like this?
You should definitely do it. I think that you will learn a lot about both the opportunities and the limitations of your venue. And I think that's actually not something that we always have time to learn. And as a venue operator, as someone who's now operated venues in the city for 20 years, like that in and of itself is so important, to have that time to learn about what your space is best for and what it is not best for. And to test your assumptions of what kind of like the answers are there. So that's one reason I would say to do it. Another reason I would say to do it is, again, like we've been talking about this, but you will encounter artists and audience members who've never been to your space before. And as Meghan just said so beautifully, like they will feel like they belong there. And that's spaces benefit from people feeling like they belong. They benefit from people feeling an emotional attachment to the space. And so more engaging in an opportunity that results in even more people feeling that sense of belonging is only a good thing. And then I guess the third reason I would say to try it is, we did talk about this a little bit too in a different way, but it is it will generate revenue for you. And it is important, just it is important to sort of like test the boundaries, aesthetically and in terms of like production, what your space is best for and not best for. I think it's also important to sort of like test the methods that can earn you that revenue that like you do need to meet your expenses and sort of your other income goals. And trying a new way of doing that is in and of itself like only a positive. Like you should be learning that, and you should not be satisfied to like only stick with one model. Like you might realize it's not for you, but it is worth trying.
Gorgeous. Meghan, anything to add to the venue leaders on this call?
Yeah, I think that it's important to know too that this, we've done this now from like a, 120 seat dance space to like a tiny, 30 seat warehouse space in Greenpoint. So I'm interested in figuring out how this can work in different venues. And sometimes that's not necessarily going to be the theater that you have. It might be in a studio space, or it might be in a lobby space. And so I think it's like I'm open to having the conversation with venues, even if they can't quite figure out how it would fit in their theater.
And you read my mind. My next question, it's right there, is how scalable is Revenue? And because we are live streaming on HowlRound, so for folks who aren't based in New York, a question that I wanted to bring into the room was, can this model hypothetically work outside of New York City, or is this something that is so New York City based? Can this work in non-traditional and non-art spaces?
I'm really curious about that, and I think it's worth testing, especially, yeah. And I've already been talking like to a couple of people about what might be on this call right now, but about how to maybe test this. I think it's the question that I really have in other places is audience. How do you have an audience for culture? What are your base costs? Like, what is the base cost of that space that you're entering, and what is it going to take to market work to them? But if you're in, I would say if you're in any kind of area where there is a glut of artists, that it's worth trying, even if it's on a much smaller scale, because I'm happy for this to be, very much like people are like, I mean, I know I won a big award and I'm really grateful for that, but it's like also like the reason I'm doing this is because I believe that New York City requires it. I think that we need, you can look at something like the Tonys last night and look at a lot of where work is coming from still. It has to grow here. It has to start small and grow. And so we definitely need this in New York City. And that's why I'm doing it. Period. End of story. I've got lots to do. I've got lots of ways I want to spend my time, and I've got my own damn theater that I also have to program. So I'm like, the reason we do this is because I understand that this is going to pay it forward. We need this in this city. And other places, I'm curious about how it works. Is it an audience cultivation for culture that's going to bring, because you have more offerings, you have more points of entry, you can represent more voices, you give more artists from different communities the space that they need. You're going to start cultivating audience development in new places by taking this. And it's not rocket science. It's not like, similar models have been used elsewhere for many years, but we have a lot of systems that I would love to be just not proprietary about and just provide anyone who wants to try this anywhere. And this is how you do it. Simple, A, B, C, and D, get a bunch of artists through so that, take these systems that we've been using at the Tank, take them and as through Revenue and use them.
Beautiful. In our last 4 minutes, I have two small, well, not small, but two quick questions for both of you. One, what is your hope for how artists and institutions alike can take up this work over the next few years, looking at the long trajectory of things? And then how can people reach out and connect with you?
I hope that we can establish this as something like, as soon as you lose a renter and you're in that tight spot, you go, oh, okay, well, let's get in touch with Revenue. Let's see if they can. And then we have enough infrastructure going that we can be like, yep, let's do it. Let's get you some revenue. Let's not let that space sit empty. You're paying to heat and cool it. And there's all these artists that need it. So let's not let it, so that's my hope, is that it could exist in that way. And then also, yes, these bigger ideas about how it could be, we could also consult other organizations that want to do it in-house and just take it on. And it could be, I would like it to spread throughout, so that it's something that it's a resource that just exists, like Art New York exists, where someone's like, I need something and I'm going to go to Art New York. I need this one specific thing. I'm going to try Revenue and see if they can help us out. And that we have the resources to be able to say yes.
Beautiful. I know we're coming up the last 2 minutes, so if people have additional questions, I have one question in the chat that I'll ask, but if people have additional questions, how can they reach out to you, Meghan, and you, Risa, as well?
So you can visit our website at revenuenyc.com. And there you can send me a message there. And that comes right to me. So you can send it to me there. And then you can follow us at Revenue NYC on Instagram. And also, if you'd like to join our mailing list, you can let us know reach out to me and we'll add you to the list.
Beautiful. And I saw Risa put their email in the chat. We will share that as well. You can also find us on our website, art-newyork.org. And to end it all on one question, before I thank you both, is for artists wanting to participate, how can they be considered? How far in advance would they find out about an opportunity with Revenue NYC?
So that's also like, follow us on Instagram and get on our mailing list. That's a lot of times we put up a call on social media, and that's like, and there's a really simple Google form you fill out. Also, I will say, like, when you sign up for an opportunity, you'll go into the list. And when we have the next one, we'll also put out a call to those artists who either have participated previously or are waiting to get a chance. So please connect.
Gorgeous. And Risa reminded us in the chat to sign up for the Art New York newsletter as well, which will be also showcasing opportunities with Revenue NYC in there as well. Risa, Meghan, thank you so much for this quick but dirty hour-long chat. So insightful, so helpful. Thank you to our incredible ASL interpreters, Carls and Alana, and for National Caption Institute, AJ, for captioning this, and to our friends at HowlRound. I so appreciate this conversation. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for having me.
again.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.